So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes, their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And today I'm delighted to have with us Alex Wollerton, who's co-founder at 2Touch Football Academy. So, firstly, Alex, thanks for spending a bit of time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, the academy, what you do, how you help people, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, perfect. Cheers, Chris. And thanks for having us on. Looking forward to it. So, 2Touch Football Academy, Matty and I, my business partner, founded in 2021 in April. So, we're just coming up to our 5th year anniversary.
Brilliant.
So, we are a football coaching company based in Leeds, and we run sessions in local primary schools, secondary. We have a college partnership, and then we also run additional football sessions for children aged under 5 to under 16 in the Leeds area.
Wonderful. What a great thing to do. Must be a very rewarding thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. I think initially it wasn't something that neither of us, me or Matty, saw ourselves doing, but growing up in such a heavily football background, it was something that coming out of full-time football, you sort of like look to what you can do next in your life,
Yeah.
and staying within the sport was something that I was really keen on doing. And the more I sort of got in and around coaching, it's sort of the niceness of giving back to people, and sort of seeing younger people who you once saw yourself as and trying to help them and give them like the same experiences you once had has
Yeah.
become like a really nice part of the job.
Brilliant. Wonderful. Alex, maybe if we sort of start with, if you talk a little bit about your background, how you got into business and why this particular one for you.
Yeah, so it was never something that when I was younger, I was really interested in having my own business, but I was always really good at football. And
Brilliant.
I started playing football about 5 or 6 years old. And then I was lucky enough to sign for Manchester United, which obviously growing up like in and around Leeds now is probably not
Yes.
the best thing to say. But my dad was a Man United fan, and my family is from Barnsley originally, so we made the step to sign for Manchester United, and I had some great years there. But as you know, it's really competitive, and at the time, that's when Sir Alex Ferguson was there, so they
Yeah,
were like the biggest club in the country.
absolutely.
Um, and around 12, I moved to Leeds United, which is where I then went on to spend, well, it'd be best part of 7, 8 years growing up in the academy.
Brilliant.
Met some really good friends who I'm friends with now, some really good coaches, and some great experiences. But through that, you don't realize at the time, but it's like an education within itself
Yes.
within the sport. And I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship, so to do a 2 year apprenticeship at Leeds United,
Yep.
and then sign a professional contract after that as well.
Brilliant.
So my first year as a pro at Leeds was Bielsa's first season as well.
Wow.
So, the nature in how the sessions ran, a lot of when I was in the under 23s at the time, we would train with the first team every day. So I got a year under Bielsa,
Wow.
seeing his methods and how it was run, which was completely different to the other 7 years that I was there.
Right.
And then, as always, Leeds and the way the club was going was getting more competitive. They was on the hunt to get in the Premier League.
Yep.
And I was probably a crucial point in my career at 19 where you sort of have to like it's make or break
Yes.
in eventually.
Yes.
And I wasn't going to quite make the cut at Leeds, and I signed for Barnsley, so I got another year's contract at Barnsley.
Brilliant.
Again, in and around the first team, but it was March of that season where COVID hit, and I know we touched upon your journey over COVID as well,
Yes. Yes.
and it sort of created a lot of uncertainty. So I didn't get another contract at Barnsley, and then I went to sign for York City. So any
Yep.
football fans, York City, like a National League club,
Yep. Brilliant.
looking to, and they still are looking to get back in the league. You know, they're
Yep.
doing really well again this year, and they were during COVID, but we were sort of like the highest level that kept getting curtailed during that COVID period.
Yes.
But we were still technically full time.
Yep.
So I was on furlough, and it was sort of Matty Downing, who I was at Leeds with. He was one of my best friends, and he was in a similar situation.
Yep.
We was both on furlough from like full time football,
Yep.
but we was trying to look at filling the gaps in. But over COVID, there was only so much you could do.
Yep.
So we had this idea of we'd both done like little bits of coaching. Why don't we set up a company that runs one-to-one football coaching, because you could do that with the social distancing restrictions in like a local field.
Yes, of course.
So that's how it began. Really, it
Brilliant.
began through COVID, like listening to the social distancing rules and trying to make it work.
Yep.
And over the summer, it just became really popular. Like we
Brilliant.
had a really big clientele base to the point where we had to make like a WhatsApp group and put sessions in, and they were just going really quickly. And then coming towards the back end of that summer, we both realized that financially it was probably going to work out better if we went semi-professional
Yep.
and picked up jobs.
Yes.
Now, the lucky part for us, and I suppose within business, you always need a little bit of luck. Both Matty's parents were school teachers. So we sort of had like an idea of like going into
Right.
local schools and
Right.
running those sessions.
Yep.
It's not something we didn't set the business up and have like this big plan of building this and doing this. Every step was just taken slowly.
Yep.
So I think by the end of like the first year, we had like a couple of schools that we were running just like after school clubs for. We had like, a wide clientele base of one-to-one sessions. And then we started to form groups out of those
Yep.
clients. And I think then the next 2 years was just like part of growing and seeing how far we could take it to a point where could we go full time with the business.
Yes.
So we was picking up more schools, but then the schools that you work with, then you start asking, well, what if we come in for a full afternoon and do PE with those sessions, or a full
Yep.
day? And then in the evening, it's like, well, now we've got like a group of under sixes. Can we get a group of under sevens, and then a group of under eights, and then a
Yep.
group of nines? And then you get enough clients, then start running holiday camps. And then it's kind of just been a continuous
Brilliant.
pattern, really. We've managed to, again, really fortunate that we know lots of young coaches who have just come out of academies or who have played with us.
Yes.
So we've got like a really good team of us. And probably fast forward up to now, we're coming up to our 5th year anniversary, and it's been like growing really nicely. We've got about 20 schools across Leeds who we're partnered with. We've got about 200 plus players within the academy.
Wow.
We've got like sold out holiday camps, birthday parties, one-to-ones, and we love it, to be fair. I think that's
Brilliant.
been like the whole process, that throughout the whole 5 years has been challenges, but we have really enjoyed growing it.
Brilliant. Well, what a great story. And, as you say, and lots of businesses do start and grow really successfully without having, as you say, the grand plan. It's just let's,
Mm.
and often the best businesses are the ones that solve a challenge or a problem.
Yeah.
And, that idea of, from what you said, that structured idea of being able to, come and play football and exercise during those times of COVID is what a great solution to a problem that existed right then. And I mean, and you sort of said you touched on a couple of challenges. What are the most significant challenges that you've had to overcome over those last 5 years?
I think because the business has grown like slowly at its own pace, there's become a different challenge each time that you grow.
Yes.
And probably what our challenges are now, we're definitely not challenged at the beginning. They were probably things that we're not even thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Um,
makes sense.
I would say our biggest thing that maybe restricts our scale at the moment is probably not the demand. Like we have, huge waiting lists for our group sessions,
Right.
and I think the demand for football, for junior football, especially in Leeds, is really high.
Yes.
I think probably where Leeds probably needs to improve is actually the AstroTurf facilities it can offer
Okay.
now,
Yeah.
because it's such a fight for all of the grassroots clubs, the
Right.
private academies and the professional clubs to have these spaces on an evening.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
so actually, it's trying to work alongside like people to pop more AstroTurf facilities up that are of higher quality, so that you are able to run your sessions.
Yes, of course.
Because it's not that people don't want to play football or do more sport. I think certainly now the generation we're heading into, parents are more aware, and young people in schools are more aware that they want to be more active.
Yeah.
It's a case of making sure that we've got staff and the facilities to actually
Yeah.
facilitate all of that. But I think at the start it was more like anything. When you build something from the ground up, it's gaining like the reputation and the trust of all your clients. And I think sometimes, particularly working with young people, that can take time.
Yeah.
And I think you have to sort of build that trust over a period
Yes.
that you actually are here because you want to be here, not just because you want to earn money. Which I think when you're working with children, you've got to make sure you get that balance right, because
Definitely.
yes, you're a business and you want to be able to give yourself a wage
Yeah.
and a salary, but also you do want to make sure that you're doing the right thing. So it's also like a fine balance.
Yeah, yeah, I'm absolutely sure. It's great when you're doing something you really enjoy, but as you say, it is a fine balance. But what I have found, I was talking to somebody last week, is what I really strongly believe is purpose-led businesses are often the most successful. You're
Mm.
doing this for a reason, not just to if all we're doing is making money, then there's probably a limited lifetime for that business. Business
Yeah.
needs a purpose, a reason.
And I think, particularly with me and Matty at the start, neither of us were businessmen. We don't class ourselves as entrepreneurs. We are just two lads who, didn't unfortunately make it within the football industry, and we both still play to a level now, but from building the business, we didn't really have, like how people just born like that business nous.
Yes.
For us, sometimes we would do things knowing that they weren't going to make profit, but in the long run, we would think it would be beneficial for us. And I think you still sometimes have to stick to that, even though when you grow, you're fortunate enough to pick and choose sometimes. But
Yep.
I think you've still got to have that element of what's actually truly like the right thing to do, and what can
Yep.
also benefit you in the long run, rather than just like short-term gain.
Absolutely. I'd suggest that's very, very sound business thinking. Really is. The short-term win is the short-term win. That
Mm, mm,
would be, and we see this a lot with, as I say, things like people trying to, discount to win business. It's like that's a short-term win. You might get the business, but you're not making any money. So where's the win?
yeah.
Yet you see it time and time again. You see it at national level. You see it at local level. But no, absolutely brilliant. So fabulous. And whether it's from those challenges or the successes you've had, what would you say are some of the biggest things you've learned about growing a business?
I think staff are really important. So the people that you get along the journey with you, and who you bring into the business. I touched upon it a little bit, but Matty and I were really lucky enough to grow up with some fantastic people in the Leeds United Academy.
Yeah.
And what tends to happen is, people who, when you get to like 19 and 20 within football, it's a really like crucial point where lads
Yes.
will go on and have a really good career. Lads will either drop down semi-professional,
Yeah.
or sometimes even play at a level which is professional, but sometimes need a little bit of an extra income. It's not just
Yeah.
100 grand a week in the Premier League.
No, I know. Yeah.
And we've been fortunate enough that when we've been looking for staff, that we've already had a really good relationship with those people
Yes.
that we can bring on board.
Yeah.
Um, and look, nobody's ever gonna, when you have a business, nobody's ever probably gonna do it exactly how you would do it, because it is your baby in effect.
Absolutely.
But bringing people in who actually want to improve something that you're trying to build is really important. I think we've been really lucky that with the lads, like at the moment, we have got about 9 coaches in total.
Right. Brilliant.
And they've all pretty much stayed from the start. So we had like 2 who we were really close with, about
Yep.
5 years ago who sort of came when me and Matty set it up, and they're still coaching for us now,
Brilliant. Brilliant.
which is like kind of why you do it, really, to
Yep.
sort of not just yourself but bring people along with you.
Yep. But no, brilliant. I do think, going back to that purpose um, thing we discussed is if you've got really strong purpose, then you'll attract the right people who
Mm.
both have the great best attitude, but also will want to do it your way. They will want to learn from you how you want to do it. Obviously, there's a few things that, very, very specific things they might do differently, but the generality of people with great attitude and desire to help you grow what you're doing are going to want to do it your way, and we find. Um, and obviously this is this is probably quite well. It's going to be an interesting question for me to listen to. But I think you're aware we're a business coaching organisation, so I am
Mhm.
keen to know who the best coaches you work with, whether that is business, obviously a lot in sport, or just life in general. Who are the people that have had the biggest impact on you?
Good question. Good question. I think looking back when you're young, I think you're so impressionable when you're younger. So I think when I look at myself and Matty, we've had a very similar upbringing in terms of who we were coached by at Leeds, maybe
Yeah,
parents and schooling and stuff like that. And we've kind of come out and molded. And we always say it's almost like Matty and I are like the same person. And,
right.
and it's probably because we've been coached back in such
Yeah,
similar environments. So I look back at some of the coaches that I had at Leeds United, and you're getting taught things that you don't realize you are getting taught at the time. But like even just every time you enter a room, like shaking somebody's hand, or just being respectful, being polite, working hard, all like the type of things that you think just come second nature.
yes,
Um, in terms of individual coaches, obviously, like the year at Leeds with Bielsa was really interesting. It wasn't, I wouldn't say because I wasn't in the first team, I had like that really good one-to-one individual connection with Bielsa,
yeah,
but from like being in the environment,
yes.
seeing how that can be structured, it was like completely different to anything I've seen before and still now.
I mean, do you have any examples you could give us on that? Because I am fascinated. I do.
Yeah, the best way I would describe it is because he's seen as like the messiah of
Yes.
Leeds United. But when you're in the environment, um, it is very intense,
Yeah.
and I think it in a business in a business world, it's very like results driven. So it's like everybody's kind of like a cog, and everyone has their part to play in terms of one sole purpose, and that was to win promotion for the
Yeah.
football club.
Yeah.
So I remember I was living in a flat in Wetherby, which was just outside the training ground,
Yes.
with one of my teammates, and I think there was a time where we must have gone like 26 days without a day off, and
Oh, wow.
it was all just going towards that point of like making sure everything was like left, nothing was left to
Yeah.
chance.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it was more the intensity that was probably the defining factor. So when you was in, everything was like to the toppest of standards. So like what you ate,
Yes.
like the whole kitchen changed. So everybody ate. Everything was like down to like the point of making sure you was at the same weight. When you was on the training field, every last detail of how the opposition was going to play, every position that we were going to set up like was like done like throughout the whole week.
Yeah.
Nothing left a chance. And I think like the attention to detail was
Yes.
just like ridiculous
Yeah.
compared to maybe then some of like the other football clubs within like that league. It's then no coincidence that they end up like being where they are just because of probably what goes in behind the scenes.
Yes. Yeah. It's interesting talking about that and then coming talking about the purpose and you know and
Mm.
because I remember but one of the things I most admire about him was when he made the team concede the goal after the I think
Yeah.
yeah I think it was it Paddy
So,
Bamford that had simulated or whatever and
yeah,
it just
yeah,
said no
yeah, 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 yeah,
and
yeah.
and I just think that's for me, that's purpose. That is being true to yourself, irrespective of that outcome. The long term is, he's really had a big impact on the club, and I'm sure there's plenty of people don't think it should have happened, but I just for one felt it was, it's how sport should be played.
Yeah, no, and look, I don't think going 26 days without a day off should be the advice to
No,
anybody. There's probably there's a balance, and I think it is very results driven, and you have to make sure you get those results.
Yeah.
Otherwise, people
Yes.
can maybe not buy into it as much. And I've been part of like other organisations where it's still been really, really good and successful. But that was just one instance that probably stuck out
Yeah.
as something I've not really seen before.
No,
Uh,
fantastic.
yeah, definitely.
Really fascinating. I mean, yeah, really fascinating. And
Mm.
whether it's from your time at Leeds or any other time, do you have any favourite quotes or sayings that you catch yourself using about whether it's business success or just life?
Yeah, and it's probably not one that like it's not like a common saying, but it's probably more appropriate to like the coaching industry.
Yep.
But I think just in life in general, Matty and I are like big believers on that. If you have what we call it intensity, that if you have energy towards what you're doing, like anything is possible. So like we'll
Yes.
always bring each other up, and I'll say how was it, or how was this, or how was so and so, and he'll say it was good, but what was one thing that there was lacking, and I'll say intensity or energy, and I think if you show people that you've got enthusiasm or that you really care about what you're doing, you've kind of got a chance with anything because obviously everybody can lack knowledge at times.
Yep.
But I think if you really care about what you're doing, then having like that energy and intensity to what you do, people can automatically see that.
Yep.
Whereas I think you can have all the knowledge or expertise that you like, but if somebody is just like too reserved in what they're doing, or you can see that they potentially don't want to be there.
Yep.
It's just so evident.
Yep.
So I think we live by the fact that if you can go everywhere and have that energy and try to obviously inspire others with you, particularly
Yes.
in what we do because we're working with younger people. But I think bringing energy and intensity is kind of what we live by.
Love it. Absolutely love it. We've got a definition of action coach, funny enough, which is emotion is energy in motion, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. And it's just
Perfect.
like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
100% agree. And you can go so far with that. I
Mm.
mean, obviously, ultimately, we want to learn from what the best way forward. But yeah, without it, it's very, very difficult. And that's again come back to purpose. Purpose creates energy and emotion in most people. If we're not resonating with the purpose, then we probably shouldn't be there. Whether it's
Yeah.
business,
100%.
a football team, or any other team, I'd suggest. And likewise, any favourite books or podcasts you can recommend about business or success or life?
I think reading books is one of those things that I keep saying is going to be like my new thing to do, and I just can't seem to get on board with it yet. But I am a big podcast listener because I
Yep,
do spend a little bit of time in the car, like traveling to sessions and stuff. So I think Diary of a CEO is always a big one for me. They've
brilliant.
always got like a good wide variety of guests, and particularly if you're into business, they
Yes,
have like lots of different ones that I like to listen to, and they're so long these days now that you can literally pop one on and it can last you
yes,
three or four car journeys.
yes. I know they do tend to be, and he has got interesting people on as well, doesn't he? Just sort of general life and health as well
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well
yeah,
as
yeah,
business, which is fascinating.
definitely. There's kind of something for everyone on there now.
Yes,
Like
yeah, I
out so quick as well that even if you don't like the last two that don't really resonate with you, there's probably another couple that are coming out that you can then
I would
sort of
agree.
choose from.
No, 100% agree. And sort of on the learning front, Alex, what would you say you've learned about yourself throughout your journey so far?
Yeah, I think time management is a big one. Because when you're younger, you kind of just don't turn anything down.
Yep.
And I think as you start to grow, you realize that you have to really manage your time effectively. Otherwise, one, you can't be the best that you can be for everything. But
Yes.
two, also like having that balance is really important.
Yeah.
So at the moment, don't get me wrong, there's times obviously where running a business, you're always going to be working, like either replying to messages or things like that. But I think organization was never one of my skills. And it was kind of something that, and it still isn't really, but trying to organize my time
Yeah.
so that, you make sure you have time for like family and
Yeah.
friends, but also making sure that you're trying to grow the business.
Yes.
And also I still play semi-professional football. So
Right.
Tuesday, Thursday evenings and a Saturday afternoon is taken up by
Jeez.
that.
Blimey.
And then obviously running a business, and I've got a fiance and friends and things like that. So managing your time was
Yep.
probably like the biggest thing that I had to learn during this period. Otherwise, you can very easily get caught up into the trap of just putting like all your time and effort into one thing and actually like
Yes.
not realizing the bigger picture.
Makes perfect sense. I'm trying to think the name of the guy. This guy I know called Paul. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But he has this acronym, these letters, and it's saying, let's get it right. KWTSNT. And it's just like that. I'm not expecting. Don't worry. It's not. And he has it on his board behind him, and it
Mm,
stands for knowing who or what to say no to.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's one of his definitions of success, not just time management, but it's like knowing when to say no. And
yeah. And probably a good example of that was that 3 years ago, because Matty and I were professional footballers, we're in a thing called the PFA, which
yep.
is the Professional Footballers Association. And we both run a Premier League course. And the guy who run the Premier League course managed to offer us both like university degrees online, fully funded.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and it was a great opportunity. And Matty sort of came to me with a proposal, and we were like, yeah, great, like that's amazing, like we can run the business, we can do an online, which was a full-time course, we can do
Right.
an online degree, and we can still play football and do all this. And I remember going into like the first assignment and like looking at my laptop, and I was with my fiance at the time, and she was like, you can do it if you want, but like something else has got to
Yeah.
give. And I think you got to realize. So I ended up not pursuing it. And Matty has pursued it, and he's up till like 3-4 a.m. now, which is in his final couple of months.
Oh wow.
And I'm like, when he graduates, I'll obviously be so happy for him. But
Yeah.
there's still not a part of me that wishes
No.
I'd done it, because I think something has to give sometimes for you to just keep taking things on. Whereas before I'd just tried to do it all at once and then
Yeah.
probably got burnout.
No, I think it's one of those is a really big learning of let's put our time where it's best, best valued, whether that's for us or for other people. We can't do everything.
Mm,
It's so difficult. I mean, congratulations that he's done that. And but brilliant. But yeah, I think managing our time. One of the ways to look at it is the value of the time invested in that in any particular activity, if that makes sense.
yeah.
One of the principles we teach people to actually coach is that if you value your time as the founder, the person responsible for growing the business, not just the person doing doing the
Mm,
work, then whatever that value is, anything you can pay somebody else a lower rate to do something that allows you to focus your time will make money. Will not just probably help you spend more time doing the stuff you really enjoy, but it also will make money for the business. Because if typically high skill, high fun stuff is the high value stuff too. If
yeah,
that
definitely.
makes sense.
Yeah,
And
100%.
so what if it helps at all, if you can make a list of at least five things that are low skill, low value, doesn't require your skill, really doesn't, sorry, low skill and low fun, because
Mm, mhm.
delegating those will both give you a lot of time and a lot more pleasure in general.
Yeah, and I think you've got to try. Sometimes you've got to try those things to
Yep.
realize, like, particularly the fun aspect. You soon realize the parts you enjoy and the parts you
Yep.
don't. But you almost have to go through that process first to realize which of those that you
Absolutely.
don't enjoy as much.
I think it's a great phrase that typically um, we like what we're good at and we're good at what we like.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it is almost it becomes more obvious then actually I'm good at it because I like it. It's like
mm,
whether that's
mm,
playing football or parts of football is. I would imagine even in part of being a professional footballer, there's stuff that you really love and the stuff that you don't so much. And
yeah.
it's and I think for different people it's different things because I appreciate I would imagine for most people it is the you know scoring the goal or whatever the point. But I know there's lots of really successful professionals that just really have decided to love training, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, no, definitely. I mean, particularly like in non-league now where I'm playing as well, I think you have to enjoy it. Otherwise,
Yes.
it's just not worth it
Yeah.
because you're giving up your Tuesday and Thursday evenings
Yeah.
and your Saturday, which restricts you from doing things on your weekend.
Yeah.
And obviously, look, don't get me wrong, like lads still obviously earn a living from it,
Yeah.
but it's still a huge demand on your life. So I
Yeah.
think you have to enjoy it.
Yes.
Otherwise, yeah. And you have to enjoy the different sides of the game because you're not playing on, Old Trafford every week. You're playing on like different grounds, which
Yeah.
require, the football to be played slightly different as well. So you have to enjoy all aspects of the game.
Brilliant. No, look, absolutely love it. And Alex, in Actually Coach Your Organisation, we have a definition of a true business that we believe is sensible most people aspire to, which is a true business is a commercial profitable enterprise that works without its owners, I
Hmm.
or can work without its owners. I'm keen to know your thoughts on that. Is that something that makes sense to you, or do you have a different view?
Um, I think trust is obviously a big part of a business. So
Great.
having trust with staff is obviously a big part
Yep.
of the business. I would say it just comes with time, and I think it's probably within each business owner's right to probably work out whether they're at that point or not.
Yes.
I would say that Matty and I are in a situation now where it definitely doesn't need both of us to be there
Yep.
at all
Great.
times. I would say it's beneficial for to have one of us there at all
Yep.
times. Um, but there is probably products and services that we are offering now which don't require us to be there, and we have complete trust in the staff
Brilliant.
that are running our sessions. I think the hard thing is as well. I think everyone always says to us as we're growing, like, "Oh, wouldn't it be great, like in a year or a couple of years or 10 years, whenever it is, you guys could do no coaching and you could run, you could do all the admin, or you could get people doing the admin for you." But at the same time, like we like the coaching,
I,
and it's not to say we'll be delivering 40 hours a week on our feet, but sometimes maybe it might not require us to be there, but if you still want to be there and you still
100%.
enjoy it, I think it's probably each business owner probably gets to different stages. I think where they probably have to make that decision themselves. I think every business is slightly different and run in
Correct.
slightly different ways.
100%. I always put the word can in there, i.e., commercial profit brand that can work without its owners. Because
Mm,
I absolutely believe, if we really love at least parts of what we do, why would we want to stop?
yeah,
I think the real, I think the point of the definition as an aspiration is let's end up just doing the stuff we really love. And if that is coaching, let's create a business. It can be as big as it chooses to be. I'll end up being a coach in it, and that's great. But all the other stuff I don't enjoy, I can have other people do it for me because I've grown a business, and
yeah.
that makes sense. So looking forward, then, Alex, what does the future look like for you guys, and what challenges do you think you might face, if any?
Yeah, well, I think you probably face challenges every day in
Yep.
business. Things always go wrong. And I think the thing with the challenges is if you can try to limit them to things that you can't control, then you always have a better perspective on how to approach them. So I think if as business owners or as a business, if you can try to make sure that everything you do is to a top standard,
Yep.
then all the challenges that you are going to face are probably going to be uncontrollables. And a lot of the time, you sometimes just have to say, like, right, let's find a solution. This wasn't caused by us, but let's try and find a solution for it.
Yes.
And there has been challenges along the way. Our biggest one was I ruptured my ACL about 18 months ago,
Right.
which caused us to have a staff member down within
Yes.
that period, certainly within the coaching. And
Yes.
then looking back now, it allowed us to get another coach in and took up some of my load. And I then had a great amount of admin time where I then managed to generate new business
Brilliant.
in. So when I was back, we had an extra staff member and,
Yep.
double the work. Um, probably moving forward now, I would say touching upon our discussion about not enough AstroTurf facilities within
Yes.
Leeds. Our plan will be to try and have our own venue. That will be
Oh
our
wow,
long-term
brilliant.
vision, like you say.
Love it.
Uh, so having our own sort of standpoint in Leeds where we can have our own AstroTurf facility with all the other things that come with that.
Love it.
That's sort of our dream to
Yeah.
create that, and then also just trying to keep building really at that steady rate,
Brilliant.
trying to make an impression, obviously in Yorkshire. But I think that's probably like the end goal.
Yeah. Brilliant. And just looking back, if you were to start your business again, is there anything significant you do differently, do you think?
No, I think timing's a big part, and we probably set up during COVID when the timing was probably appropriate to set up. Since then, I would say that we have got a lot more competitors
Right.
in our field.
Yep.
Um, and I will probably say for anybody setting up in a similar industry now, we touch upon like the AstroTurf facilities. It'd probably be even harder for like a startup to get
Right. Yeah.
space and things like that, or
Yes.
maybe even to generate leads with schools and things,
Yeah.
because there is a lot of competitors who already have like those contracts and things like that. So I think timing wise, we didn't realize how fortunate we probably were at the time setting up, because we'd never imagined taking it to this point. And I would like to say we would probably back ourselves a little bit more in terms of we could have maybe grown quicker. But then I also think you can only really say that with hindsight, can't you?
Hindsight. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I know. And I think sometimes like probably making those mistakes are probably good for you in the long run.
Yes.
Um, so we don't really look back at what we could have done, because I think now there's even more opportunities for us to grow than there probably was even at the start. So I think sometimes
Brilliant.
you've got to be fortunate where you are and probably just keep looking to push on from this point onwards.
Yeah, I mean, somebody asked me that question, like, what do you think? Ages ago,
Mm.
it stood me for a bit, and I said, and I've heard people say this, is that I don't want to change anything, because if I change anything, I may not be here. Where we
Yeah,
are
yeah,
right now is a function of all the decisions and actions we make. And if here is great, why
mm.
would we want to change anything? So,
Yeah,
there's that risk, that the sliding doors idea, or the ripple effect of just one
yeah.
change. So I think it's an okay answer to say, no, this is cool. And as you said, if you hadn't have made some of those mistakes, you might not be here right now, because you've learned and developed. So
Yeah.
absolutely brilliant. Final question. What would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you, if you could go back in time and do that, Alex?
Um, an 18-year-old me, I would probably say just enjoy the process a little bit more. So an 18-year-old me now would probably be so fixated on getting into like the Leeds United first team and becoming a professional footballer. And I probably look back at my life now and think, wow, you had it so easy. Like you
Brilliant.
you was going into the training ground every day, training with your mates. You was getting food cooked for you. You was living in a flat or in digs, and you think you have all the stresses of the world on you, but really, it was such an easy life, and I probably didn't take it all in. I know at the time it's easy to say, because you think, well, if you didn't think like that, you were never really going to get.
I,
I,
I, um,
it's one of those. But I think sometimes you've just got to really like enjoy it,
yeah,
and sort of take it in, and obviously work hard and things like that. But probably my advice would be just to enjoy the process,
yes,
and just be true to yourself, because then everything sort of has like a pattern of working out. You just got to make sure you do the right things,
yep.
and then in 10 years' time, I might be like, I've enjoyed it too much, but then you've got to keep learning.
Absolutely. But I do think enjoyment and fun is a big part of success in general, whether that's business success or life success or sporting success. I'd suggest it's like,
Mm.
making an environment where people enjoy themselves. In fact, a good mate of mine, recommended a book that I love, which is called The Happiness Advantage.
Right. Okay.
And it's a really and it's basically got a lot of analytical proof to show environments that are enjoyable are more
Hmm.
successful.
Yeah.
If you flip it over this idea that you got to work really hard, everyone's got to be miserable, and you've just got to be. It was literally flipping it on its head and say, no, the ones where we really, and it doesn't mean people. It just means let's create an environment and everyone's happy, and we'll get more done. It's sort of obvious in many ways, but
Yeah. No,
um,
definitely.
yeah, so yeah, that's a great book. Alex, it's been really delightful talking to you and really fascinating, and I really thank you for your time because there's really great learnings in a lot of what we talked about. And for anyone that's watching that would like to get in touch with you or the Two Touch Football Academy, what would be the best way of doing that?
Yeah, so we've got a website which is www.2touchfootballacademy.com, or inquiries at 2touchfootballacademy.com on email. But yeah, it's very easy. We've got all our information on the website,
Brilliant.
like contact numbers, email. So we're very easy to contact.
Brilliant. Well, it'd be great to swing by another 6 to 12 months to just see what the next stages are. But for now, thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you. And I've really enjoyed chatting to you, Chris.
Yeah, me too.